Hey, Sean here, gift from Lyft. Three solid reasons why everyone should think about being a gig driver at some point in their lives. If they have access to a car and have a little bit of time during the week, I'm going to give you three really good takeaways of why you should do that. So join me, hang on, I'll be right there. So, three really good reasons why everyone should think about becoming a gig driver at some point in their lives. If they have access to a car and reasonably have some time during the week. And it's not because of the three reasons have nothing to do with, the side hustle, the income, the flexibility. Those are all aspects of it. And if you want to pursue that, there's plenty of video folks, experts you can go to for that. This is completely different. Three completely different reasons why you're going to benefit from driving strangers in the backseat of your car, like I have, over 3,000 in the last 2.5 years. So let me quickly get to those three main points. So the first solid reason I believe, and what's been a profound impact from my driving, is just the ability and access to strangers, people you would not normally socialize with or meet in any other context. Completely people outside your own kind of socioeconomic, cultural, familial, and or local human connectivity. How's that? And unless you're living in a rural area where you don't, a village of 10 people, and there's places like that, I get that. But for the most of us who are living in more kind of a suburban, rural, metropolitan area who have access to cars, you're going to meet a lot of people that you wouldn't normally meet. And that's a really good thing. And in these three reasons, part of, subtext for the first one is that it's a good thing because of the fact that they're not people you normally would meet. So you're going to get exposed to diverse viewpoints, cultural personalities, senses of humor, lack thereof. And also, if you have the time and the inclination to ask a few basic questions beyond the weather and just be receptive to what people might be willing to share. And there's some people who don't share anything, and that's fine. It's still a ride. It's still a point A to point B, and you have to remember that. But if you kind of allow yourself the time, and this took me a couple of weeks to get this feedback. For some others, it might be much quicker than that, or it might be a lot longer than that. So it's not going to be. A lot of people are not comfortable having back and forth exchanges. I get that too, but you should allow yourself the possibility of having that interaction, and just that fact in and of itself, to have exchanges with people. I've had over 3,000 in that back seat, and it's just left me a much more I've been affected by that in a positive way, ultimately a very positive way. And I'll go into the into the second reason in another when I gather my thoughts here, because I'm just doing this off the cuff. The second big reason is that you're going to have something. If you have a family, if you're living with other people, like most of us are, or even if you're living alone, even more importantly, actually, you're going to have a whole range of people in your network, in your community, over time that you'll get to know. There'll be repeat riders. Many of them, that's their only method of transportation. You'll get to know who these people are, and you'll pick them up again. If you stick with it for more than a couple of weeks into a month, you'll see the same people pop up, and you'll have a chance to get to know them. And there's people like that I've given multiple rides to. I know their whole story, we just kind of continue the conversation. And that is such a gift, pardon the pun intended, the gift of Lyft, to get to know people. I have about 10 people who I know on an ongoing basis, their personal situation, their story, and I feel like they're almost part of my they are a part of my network. I consider them, I'm closer to them than some of my family members, quite frankly, because they're just some amazing people I've gotten to know and share things with. And so the second thing is that network. You'll build a network in community. You'll get to know your community. If you're living in a big metropolitan area like where I live in northern New Jersey. And Christ, there's small towns, many small towns to bigger towns to city. in an environment. I'm 15 miles west of Manhattan, so you can imagine the amount of interaction and communities that I can have access to, which is really an amazing thing. I get to know who's doing what. Firemen, policemen, nurses, all sorts of business folks, CEOs. I just drove a father of one of our former governors. And it's just, the list goes on. And I wouldn't have had access to any of that if I had not put myself out and did this gig driving. So that's the second thing, the community that you'll interact, create, and build on an ongoing basis. The third thing, I think, is what I've been able to bring back to other people in my life. And I'm thinking of my daughter here, who will ask me, hey Dad, who did you pick up? Did you have any good rides today? And even my wife, who will grudgingly like, oh, that's it, so do you have any good ride? She'll say, hey, so who'd you meet today? And I'll be able to share with them, usually a pretty good story or two about someone who's going through something difficult. Or I'll tell my daughter I picked up a couple of young kids with their mom or dad, in my car, and and she's always intrigued by that. And or there'll be some person or a story that's just so uplifting and inspiring. Someone going through a serious illness, or a family member, or someone who's a caregiver who's taking care of an elderly person and then going home to take care of an extended family. And I think, oh, you think we're busy, we're so exhausted. Well, you guess what this person did that I met today. So there's that perspective it brings to your life, and it will do that to you. And I would say, I would challenge you, any of us, you, me, need to be humbled in a way that you don't realize how much you do have. And I mean that from even those of us who are struggling with our own health issues or whatever, money issues. Most of us are alive, we're healthy, we're walking for the most part, able to do that, we can see. And as I say this, there's people I know who can't walk that well, and there's people in my family who don't see that well. And I just think, oh my God, what are the amazing things that they're doing? And we all have something. And I guess that's where I'll leave with the third thing, is that kind of perspective that everyone's struggling with something. And you get a lot of that by listening and by getting to know people, and doing this by doing gig driving. And for anyone who's saying I'm shilling for Lyft or for Uber, check out, I have a video where I post about how much money Lyft is making by not paying their drivers enough. So I'm very critical of the gig industry on an aspect of it, and you can check that link below. But I just think that's a side issue. I think the benefits of gig driving are much more valuable, and in ways that most people don't, are not shown. And most of the stuff that we see on YouTube, especially, or on TikTok or on Instagram, or all this stupid shit, the insanity that can happen. I'm lucky that I don't get exposed to much of that, if any. I also drive mostly during the day, and I don't take rides late at night or into the evening, so I'm not really exposed to. I've had a couple of those type of rides, and actually they've been really funny for me. They worked out kind of quite well, because it just reminded me, like, oh, I'm so glad I don't do that stuff. So anyway, Sean Gift of Lyft here. I hope those three things are inspiring and moving, so everyone should think about giving it a shot for benefits that I think are not obvious to many people. Anyway, Sean here, Gift of Lyft. If you enjoyed this, subscribe, and I enjoyed making it, so thanks.